I don't think it was until I was probably, and I shouldn't say 40s, probably in my early 30s when I was, we'll talk about this. I didn't know how to really read or write until I was 32.
Mm.
So it wasn't until I had actually had an executive position where I was responsible for communicating.
Yeah.
And fortunately, my mentors stepped in and said, wait a second, you don't know how to do these things. And I'm like, well, no, you can read it. And they're like, yeah, but it's just a paragraph of words. Like there's no, like, I understand there's meaning there, but it isn't, I just didn't have that level of skill.
Welcome to Extraordinary. I'm really excited for you guys to join us this episode. As always, I'm your host, Forbes Shannon, joined by my co-host,
Christine Butler.
And the guest that we have in studio today, we go way back, but you are the systems guy, you're the process guy. We got your book, The System, on the bookshelf, just right over there.
There's a lag in that. Yeah. So it's, there we go. All right there. Yeah, The System.
There it is. Yes. Very good Vanna White, Christine.
Thank you.
This guy, he goes in and he helps all organizations just trying to retool from the ground up. He's a keynote speaker. You're pounding the road right now. You're a 2-time author, soon to be 3rd.
5-time author.
5-time author.
Hi.
Jeez, okay.
Yeah, 6th is in the works.
6th is in the works. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the process fixer himself, Derrick Mains.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely, of course.
This is super cool. So we want to spend a little bit of time as we figure out, what makes you extraordinary. I can list a bunch of things off, but
probably easier for anybody else to list them than self, right?
Yeah,
I think that's always the hardest thing.
Right.
It's like I don't think you can. Maybe you can't always identify extraordinary for yourself. Somebody else has to identify that for you.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Especially because things that are just probably super easy to you, someone else is like, that's extraordinary that you do that.
Yeah, totally.
What's one of those?
Wow. What's one of those for me?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Something that someone complimented you on where you're like, really? That's extraordinary? Because that's just who I
am. This is going to get a little deep for a couple minutes.
Let's do it.
And I know we talked a little bit about my background and history, right? But I think for me, understanding I was intelligent was a real awakening to me that did not happen until I was in my 40s.
Really?
Yeah. And it was because of the way that I was brought up in a religious community that didn't see value in any learning beyond one book.
Okay.
So,
right.
and the ideology and dogma that I was programmed with said, you don't have to worry a lot about the future because there won't be one. So
Interesting.
So you have this sort of Armageddon-ish kind of approach to the world, which means that when children are being developed in that environment, they're not nurtured to become, integral parts of society.
Okay.
They're nurtured to be righteous so that they can participate in the society after this society.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, there's a deep philosophical, maybe that's not the right word, a deep understanding with children that came up that way of being somewhat special because you're part of this group that is separated from everybody else. And that separation means that when you do have to go out and experience the world, your experiences with it, I think initially are not, you have a hard time relating that back to yourself.
Okay.
Because you see everything on a timetable of winding down.
Okay.
So why would you invest in something like, I remember my parents actually saying, why would you go to college? Like, we don't know anybody that's ever been to college. What would be the purpose of that?
Really?
And what would be the long-term value of college? They just couldn't understand it. And they felt like that participating in it would shatter the ideology and the dogma that was heavily ingrained in my upbringing. So to me, that's a long story to say, I don't think it was until I was probably, and I shouldn't say 40s, probably in my early 30s when I was, we'll talk about this. I didn't know how to really read or write until I was 32. So it wasn't until I had actually had an executive position where I was responsible for communicating.
Yeah.
And fortunately, my mentors stepped in and said, wait a second, you don't know how to do these things. And I'm like, well, no, you can read it. And they're like, yeah, but it's just a paragraph of words. Like there's no, like, I understand there's meaning there, but it isn't, I just didn't have that level of skill. So I had mentors that I was very, very fortunate that surrounded me with others who could do those things for me. Now that allowed me, I think it wasn't until that moment where actually somebody said to me, hey, you're a highly intelligent guy. You just haven't been equipped with the right tools. And nobody never told me that before. I mean, I'd never heard that before. I was like, well, wait, why am I not just, I thought I'm just like everybody.
What did you think? So you just thought you were before you, as someone
I didn't know
told
there
you
was
that.
distinctions in intelligence. That was never something that was ever brought up.
Wow.
Like, because when you live in that environment and you look at scientists or professors, they're labeled as enemies because they are trying to dismantle the dogma and trying to prove, there's this belief that it's almost everybody's an atheist outside of you, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
They're all attacking you. It's a very, this word, the enemy, comes up a lot in that sort of environment where you have this really strong belief that things either come from good or come from evil. And to me, the deconstruction of that occurred only about, I guess it's been 9 years now. I remember the moment where it deconstructed. And
Paint the picture.
Yeah.
so I was mid 40s. I was watching a documentary about Bill Murray.
Okay.
About Bill Murray.
And I had watched the documentary because I had met Bill Murray multiple times. He was a sort of a pseudo spokesperson for a company that I was a president of, and I had relations with him and had met him and had played golf with him and done those kind of things. And somebody had told me about this document. I think there was a book, The Tao of Bill. There was a couple of things that like about that time that were coming out about him. And in that, somebody repeats a story that Bill Murray told them, where his philosophy on life is based upon the Taoist or Taoist story of the prized horse. And if you're unfamiliar with that story, it's an ancient Chinese story, probably 3,000 years old, that says a farmer has this really prized horse and everybody is really jealous of this horse. And one day it runs away.
Yes.
The neighbors come to him and say, we're sorry for your loss. And he says, well, who's to say what's good or what's bad? In some versions of the story, he says maybe. Yeah. But who's to say what's good or what's bad? And I'm glad I heard it that way because the next day the horse returns with 9 other horses.
Right.
And they run into his barn and his neighbors say, wow, look how fortunate you are.
Right.
And he says, well, maybe.
Well, who's to say what's good or what's bad?
And then that night, his son goes out and tries to ride one of these horses, but it's not broken.
Yep.
And he is thrown from the horse and he's seriously injured and has broken leg and he's laid up and he's, he might be crippled. I mean, it's really a bad thing. And the neighbors come, of course, with their condolences. And once again, maybe.
Who's to say?
And the next morning, he wakes to hear the sound of the king's army marching into town to conscript all the young men to go fight the unwinnable war across the sea. And they see his son and they say, well, he can't go.
Yeah.
So who's to say what's good or bad?
Right.
That's why I say, the greatest American philosopher is Garth Brooks, right? Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. Like it's the reason that deconstructed me in a really specific way is because it is the first time in my life anybody ever told me that there wasn't a clear distinction between good and bad, and that good events could be bad and bad events could be good.
You were living in absolutes before then.
Complete and total absolutes, light and darkness.
Wow.
And that beauty of gray, that that's a live song for anybody from back in the 90s. We were talking about music before this, but it's a wonderful song. This idea of the beauty of gray, right? The variance, the spectrum on which things occur. And in that moment, I almost was immediately faced with all of the things that I thought were good.
Yeah.
That came out not to be good.
Right.
I called them blessings when they happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I called them curses when they failed.
Right.
And the flip also happened. When bad things happened to me, I blamed this invisible force of the enemy trying to stop me. And then 6 months later go, oh, well, and my religious upbringing would have said, well, all things work for the good for those who are called by God. Well, that's what I was taught. But that's just not true. All things don't work for the good.
Right.
Can anybody justify the Holocaust as working for the good? I mean, there just isn't. There are lines on that spectrum. So that for me, although in that moment I didn't realize what it had done, it was the first time in my life I actually felt like I was having not a mental breakdown, but a mental break.
Yeah.
And it caused me to move into I guess the best way to say it would be a primordial state for a period of time.
Yeah.
That said, I need to reform ideas from these ruins.
Did you feel like your identity was like shattered?
Yeah.
Like, how would you
You know
describe
what?
that feeling?
I actually felt like it was set free.
Set free.
Well, I like
Yeah.
to say that all the
Mm.
best things happen on the edge of chaos.
I think that's probably pretty true.
Mhm.
So in that moment, we would have thought I would have had fear. You would have thought I would have had all of these things that I had been programmed to have.
Yeah.
But when I had the opposite,
Mm.
that really gave me really a profound sort of awakening in that moment
Got it.
that made me understand the world very, very differently, and had a really hard time then coming to I don't want to say integrating those old things, because I still think there's some benefit to the integration of those things,
Mm.
but I had to now hold them in a different light.
Mm.
Where before I held them in the light of truth, now I have to hold them in the light of understanding,
Yeah.
understanding where my parents come from,
Mm-hmm.
blue collar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they both became pastors at one point. They were televangelists, right? They were
Mhm.
well-known speakers and traveling itinerant ministers, and that allowed them to elevate their status.
Right.
So they needed to have a locked-in vision on that belief, because
Sure.
that's what's going to help their status. So it was just very interesting for me for that to deconstruct. I will tell you, I think that uh, shift only could have occurred because my parents are deceased. I don't
Oh,
think it could have occurred
interesting.
while they were still here.
Why do you think that is?
I think there is deep psychological
100%.
meaning to your parents' relationship with you.
Yeah.
And I don't think we think about this age of 18 as like a hard break, but it's just not.
Mm.
But in most ancient societies, in most ancient civilizations, there's a rite of passage between those states.
Okay.
That occurs for both girls and boys. For girls, it's more biological. For boys, it's more inherited through traditions,
Yeah.
and ceremony. You know, you think about, like, the native. When a boy's 12 or 13 years old, you send him out
Yeah.
Right.
into the world by himself for a
Right.
period and say, "Come back after you've killed a mountain lion." It's
Mhm.
like, well, wait, what? I mean, but don't come back until you kill the mountain.
Yeah.
Right.
And that, so I think it's, this is why so much of my work around systems is around ideology and dogma. It isn't that I'm a system. I mean, I believe systems can solve most of the world problems if we actually had systems that didn't incorporate opinions, didn't think about, that focused more on the actual structural problems. But what I've realized is the reason that we don't do that is because of dogma.
Mm.
It's because of these deep-seated beliefs. I mean, what is America? What is America? Is America borders, or is it an idea?
Right.
It used to be
Yeah.
an idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not anymore.
Right.
Mhm.
It's very, very clear.
Yeah.
150 miles south from us, it is not
Mhm.
a idea anymore. It has a distinct line
Right.
of where it ends and where it begins. And this is why, some of the things I'm getting ready to publish are a little bit more controversial, because it's asking the question if, would 100 years from now, is America confined inside these borders?
Mm.
Or could we revive America as an idea instead of people having to come here for it? It
Right.
can come to them.
Mm.
Right? How do we export freedom as and I want to be careful with the word freedom too, because lots of countries are way more free than we are. I
Sure.
think we're not even in the top 10 anymore.
Fully
Mm.
agree.
Like
Okay.
we have these ideas about those kind of. Have you ever seen the first scene from the Newsroom? You remember that?
Yes.
I mean,
Mhm.
that scene is iconic.
That scene.
I mean,
yeah.
It is a deconstruction. It deconstructed me as well. That scene actually had.
that speech
it-
from Jeff Daniels.
Yeah, I couldn't read anything for weeks. I couldn't
Mm.
listen to anything.
It was on your mind.
Yeah, I just constantly kept thinking about, wait, I've always believed America is greatness and all of these things. And then to be faced with the logical, statistical data
Mhm.
Yeah.
that says not the case, other than in, premature deaths from medical problems,
Yeah.
Number of people
imprisonment.
incarcerated.
I don't remember what they all were, but
Yeah.
but when you do that and you go, wow, wait a second, but it was. And I think that's the key point to his after it settles into the people that are
Mhm.
offended by that, he says, but it was.
Yeah.
Mm.
America was an idea, and it was greater than that. And we weren't individuals,
Mm.
right? We were a, what's the right word? Transpersonal other.
Sure.
Right? There was
Okay.
not just us, but there was us together.
Yeah.
And that was also a being in and of itself.
Mhm.
And I think Forbes, I don't know if you've ever been to any of
Mhm.
my, you've been to some of the philosopher groups.
Yeah. Mhm.
One of the early ideas that came out of these philosophy groups was this idea that ideas could be used like tools to extend human leverage.
Mhm.
Yes.
When you have a hammer, I know where the hammer will hit. Maybe not on the first hit, I can judge, but the more that I use that hammer, the more that I know what it can do.
Right.
If you ever backed your car into a garage, you can sort of feel the edges
Yes.
of it, right? And my philosophy is that if we can do that with human tools, we should also be able to do that with human ideas.
Right.
And use those ideas as leverage.
And so the ideas become like kind of the deep roots in your brain. Like, so in high school, I had a exchange student from Russia, and we were playing the Call of Duty Cold War edition.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And,
I can imagine his perspective was totally different.
Well, you know, he just casually mentioned how Russia, the USSR, won the Cold War. And I was like, they didn't win the Cold War. It was a Cold War. And if anyone won it, we won it.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, where'd you learn that? I was like, school. Where'd you learn that? He goes, school.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, is this just dogma?
And we want to defend our position. See, this is the problem.
Yeah.
The second that you start to defend that American greatness,
yes,
you now are not you. You are using the persona of a transpersonal other that is not aligned maybe with reality. And I think there's I wish I could recall the name of it, but I watched it maybe a year ago, and I need to revisit it. But there was a documentary about the Cold War. They were talking about the nuclear arms race. And if you've ever seen Fallout, you've seen the Fallout show, right? Great show. You know, in the 1950s and 60s, there was this panic around communism. We had just defeated the Nazis. Our ally was the Soviets.
Right. They honestly, they're the ones that did them in, you know?
Right. But our ally was the Soviets. And when the divvying came up, Stalin assumed he would be at the same table because he had a larger human sacrifice than anybody else, and he was shunned. You know, FDR and Churchill decided to recast the world in their image, and this created the Cold War, and it created the split of Berlin, and it created all of these things because there was a deep sense of betrayal by the Soviets and the Russian people. We didn't like their humanitarian approach, and because of that, we decided to cast them as the new enemy. And I'm not defending or not saying I'm a Russian.
I understand.
You know, I'm not a Russian plane here. But the point is that freedom, when it did come to Russia in the early 1990s, when it happened, it then immediately was followed by disruption of the supply chain, a lack of food, a lack of jobs, infrastructure deterioration. So the idea of freedom in the mind of a Soviet youth that is between 30 and 60 years old, is that freedom means there's no more structure and everybody's left to their own, and the rich and the powerful and the oligarchs will take everything.
Yeah.
So they see freedom more as it probably actually is in the United States as a corporatocracy, but they see it in a very different perspective, and that shifts the way that they see the world.
Yeah.
So the fascinating thing about this documentary that I referred to was they were talking about this 50s and 60s when things were just crazy with Khrushchev and this escalation upon escalation upon escalation. And then we have the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we finally have spy planes, and we can fly over and we see what's going on in Cuba, and we realize, oh my God, they have something right here. But then what wasn't really mentioned at that time and is now coming back from history is the next thing we did is took those spy planes and flew over Russia. And we said, now that we know what they have in Cuba, we need to understand what their arsenal is across the country. And they identified, after we had built hundreds and up to 1,000 or more nuclear weapons, they realized the Soviets had a total of 4. And later in the record, it was determined that Khrushchev did not understand that the arms race was physical.
Right.
He thought it was psychological. He never, like, they were shocked when they found that America, they're like, well, yeah, sure, America has 1,000. Like, no, but no idiot is going to make 1,000. You would blow up the whole freaking world. The point of the nuclear weapon was a deterrent to not use the nuclear weapon. But then all of a sudden, once the realization that America actually had taken it literally, now all of a sudden, what do you have to do? Well, now you have to do it because you're losing. And I hope, and I don't want to get too philosophical or off point here.
Please do.
I hope we as Americans can understand that that's exactly what's happening with China right now.
Yes.
A lot of what you're seeing in the global movements of people and spaces and things is because the Chinese are dominant. We are not the most advanced civilization. 800 million people have come out of poverty in the last 10 years there. The infrastructure, we think about sweatshops. They don't do that anymore. Maybe in some rural parts of China, there's automation, there's computers. I mean, we can't build cell phones here in this country. The Chinese can do it because they have the skills to do it. And, a few years back when Biden was in, there was a leaked report about the naval capacities of China. And it was determined, and you can find this report online, that the Chinese had built more large ocean-bearing ships, cargo, transport, battleships, these kind of things. They had built more that year than America had built since 1948 combined.
Wow.
They
With
currently
greater
have,
technology.
with better technology. They currently have 210 times the naval industrial capacity of the United States.
Wow.
Meaning that, yes, we're larger than them today.
Yeah.
But if for a moment, something did happen, and their response was to turn their industry onto manufacturing these things, we could not.
Sure.
Could not survive that.
That's what kept the United States alive in the World War II was the manufacturing ability.
Absolutely. Well, everything else was bombed out.
Yep.
I mean, you think of this is why the 50s and 60s in America were so good. It didn't have to do with anything with our policy. Actually, our policies became really archaic for a point in time. And they returned back to a command and control society that we had gotten rid of. But we were the only seller in the world. I mean, I want you to really think about that. Every factory in Britain, every factory in Europe, every factory in Japan was gone.
Right.
They needed years. I mean, there's stories of European countries ordering millions of products from America, like calling somebody and saying, "Hey, do you sell toasters? Yeah, can we get 1 million of them?"
Right.
Well, no, you can't get them. But I need 20
I would be like, what are you building with 1 million toasters?
But what was happening is because everything else was destroyed, they had to buy refrigerators and toasters and cars.
Everything.
But because city of Tokyo, 67% of the city of Tokyo was incinerated.
Right.
It's bigger than Los Angeles County is today. I mean, just to refrigerators and cribs and mattresses. This is why in the 1950s and 60s, and then we get into the 1970s, and American salespeople are calling, "Hey, you need another 1 million mattresses?" And they're like, "No, man, we got our own factories now. We don't need you anymore."
Right.
So America took this position of leadership during the war, and then we built the world at the end of the war, but never saw that what would be next.
That perspective never changed.
It was just because the word greatness stood in the way.
Yeah.
We just thought that we would always be great. When you become great, I've worked with the U.S. Olympics and some things, right? When you become great, that's when the work really comes in. It's the getting to great. It is hard. For some of these Olympians that are going to go to their 9th or 10th Olympics, I don't think unless you go to the training facility and see what these people work 8 hours a day in the weight room.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they run hours and hours. It isn't like they have another job.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't be an Olympian and be an accountant. You have to be an Olympian.
Yeah.
And because once you obtain that level of greatness that you're capable of, then you've got to put in the work.
Once you've achieved that level of greatness, that's when the work really begins, is kind of what you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because
so
if not, what you'll become is, this is why, and I can't prove this fact anymore. I've tried it with ChatGPT, but I was told by somebody in the 90s that 100% of American Nobel Prize winners were tenured professors. I can't prove that anymore. ChatGPT seems to think there's not enough data, but it thinks it's over 80%.
Okay.
So once you have obtained some level of knowledge that allows you to obtain tenure, where you have some protection, that's actually when your research begins. It's not all of the things that lead up to it. And I think as we were talking about a guy like Claude Shannon, who creates binary and algebraic equations on quantum and all of these type of mathematical discoveries that make the world that we have today, I think actually him losing interest in that and sort of moving on to the next one actually is probably a good thing. It's probably why he creates so many things, because he wasn't worried about, he didn't want to be just great at binary. He wanted to be great. And so once he discovered binary, then he had to put in all the work to maintain that greatness.
Right.
And to be great in other things, because it can be luck for you to do it once.
Right.
To do it 5 or 6 times, no.
So then is it fair to say when you had that moment where you realized that nothing was inherently good or evil, and you had that kind of identity shift where someone said for the first time that you were intelligent? Was that your threshold of greatness? Was that when work began for you?
Oh yeah, because I realized that I we'll get a little bit into the recent developments in that too. That was the first time I actually realized, wait, I could actually do something exceptional.
Extraordinary.
Extraordinary. My apologies. I knew at that moment I could do something extraordinary, and I never had believed that before. I believed that I would become extraordinary, but I believed I would do it on the timeline of a deity that wasn't willing to communicate with me when that was.
Okay.
And that I had to stay constantly equipped to be prepared for this moment that was never going to come.
So was it almost like you got permission to do it yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, I talked about this on my podcast at one point about this that is a really strong belief in my head, that I believe that what stands in our way is, sayings like, they that wait upon the Lord. Like was really ingrained in my head when I was a kid. And then I realized I'd been waiting for a long time with no sign or indication of direction. So if that's the case, then maybe the person I'm waiting on is me. And that is what really allowed me to take control of my life. And it did change a lot of my belief structures and all of these kind of things. And now recently, and I think as I've done the work internally, and I think all men should do that type of work, I think we have a very, the pendulum swung a little too far in some regards, I think, on both sides, where we don't really understand what true masculine leadership looks like
100%.
anymore. We just don't. Like most women date sons.
Yeah.
They don't date men, right? And why is that? Well, because there's a lot of things about men that are crude and that don't fit into polite society. But we have to remember there's hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary biology that put those traits there for a reason.
Yeah.
And before we remove that trait, we should at least consider. And I'll tell you, this will be very controversial, but I've had this conversation with other men of like, I am not so sure that eliminating bullying was a good thing.
Dude, I said that
I think it's a big mistake. I think it was a big mistake.
There's a lot of people.
My life was changed by that.
There's a lot of
very positive way.
So many people in this generation walking around, talking out the side of their neck. And I'm like, you've never been punched in the mouth.
Yeah, well, that's the Maynard James Keen, right? The remedy from Pussifer, if you're familiar with the song, right?
Oh, yeah.
You act like somebody who's never been knocked the fuck out, right? Why are you acting like you need that? I mean, have you ever read Iron John or any of these sort of male books that talk about?
I just read The Way of the Superior Man by David Data.
And one of the older ones is called Iron John, and it talks about, it's written by mythologists. I'm really big right now in reading mythologist work. Because what they do is they look at human myths across the spectrum of time, and then they try to extract from that a single story that is universal. And one of them is this concept of Iron John. And the concept is that there has to be women and boys and girls are different in the sense that a girl does never really have to separate from her mother. She can always be with her mother. She can always find things to do with her mother. They have similar goals and similar objectives in which they're pointed. Boys, on the other hand, as little boys, 8, 9 years old, there has to be a distinct break.
Yeah.
There does. And because a boy has to be able to look at his mother as caring and love and nurturing and all these things, but also as he starts to obtain sort of sexual attraction, he can't do that.
Oedipus complex.
Right. Yeah, so you're right. That's exactly
Freud.
what it is. So yeah, it's very Freudian, it's very Jung and these kind of things. But this idea of this sort of physical separation. And the problem with that is women don't want that to happen because they are nurturing.
Right.
There needs to be this break. They'll use shame. They'll use all sorts of different things to try to, I don't even want to say manipulate, but try to maintain that order.
Yeah.
And that pull apart is really important. Like you've got to be able to separate that. And this is why I think like tribal knowledge is really important. I think we don't have ritual anymore. We don't have those kind of things where older men are actually imparting knowledge into younger men. I think social media has hurt that too. There are not a lot of gray-haired voices on social media speaking to young men. What young men need right now is gray-haired voices speaking to them.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is every person I've talked that about, even friends of mine that are feminists are like, I totally agree with you.
The best relationships in my life that have served me the most, right? I've got 2 best friends, Aaron Bear and Keith Mitnick, and they're both exactly 20 years older than me. And so, I say like, when I introduce somebody to my best friend, I'm like, this is my best friend. And they're like, yeah, but like, what do you have in common? It's like, they are teaching me how to be a man, So the funny thing is about that book, The Way of the Superior Man, Aaron and Keith both gave it to me when I went through this breakup.
True story.
Separately, And I was like, okay, well, if both of them gave it to me, I better.
Yeah. Well, then, I told Aaron to read The King Within. It's another book from the 80s that really, and the interesting thing about that book, and I haven't read this other one, which I need to do. The interesting thing about that book is it was written long before the era that we're in today. And it predicts the era we will be in today.
Yeah.
It says, look, if boys cannot separate from their mothers and cannot live a distinct life that maybe their mother is repulsed by even a little bit
Mhm.
of how different they are. They shot a bird and their mom shames them for that.
Right.
Not understanding that that's actually an evolutionary characteristic to understand. And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. Again, there's not. It's on a spectrum of those things, and then we can't judge those. But if that doesn't happen, then masculinity becomes tyranny.
For sure.
It either becomes weakness or tyranny.
Yeah.
And tyranny is actually just weakness expressed in a loud voice.
Right.
Yeah. This is why you mentioned that earlier about you act like you've never been knocked out, right? I have been.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the best lessons in my life
came from an ass kicking, right?
Yeah, it came from an ass kicking that went, okay, now I understand. I have a great friend he's a European guy. He's not a large framed man. But he talks about how he was just relentlessly bullied as a kid and how that formed him into an intellectual, how it formed his wit, how it formed his sense of being. And he said, and here's the funny thing. As soon as I began to express that, girls that seemed like they liked that persona of man came to me. And he's like, and I got more action than those guys did because, and it's not because I acted feminine. Right. It's not because I reflected back that feeling of boyishness to the mother, but it is because I distinctly became something that it represented an archetype that women, that men, that others could follow. Yeah. And I would have never gotten that unless it was that. And I have multiple experiences of that myself.
I got bullied a lot for my writing when I was a kid. And I'll tell you what, guys, you need to learn how to write to women.
That's a great point. Yeah,
you write an essay about a woman and read it to her. That's
love. Think about love for how many hundreds and hundreds of years.
100%
was expressed via men have a hard time expressing things in the way that they probably should. And candidly, I got to tell you, I think there's lots of people that would I don't want to say this stereotypically, but sometimes women get the ick when men act a little too much.
Yes.
Well, Christine's writing a book called The Other Side about the balance between masculine and feminine. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think women get a very unique perspective on, and I want to be really careful with words here too, with the feminine aspect of a man these days. I think a lot of women complain that men are too feminine these days. Like, I have to split the bill. They won't open the car door. It's even little things like that, right? Women have this like mentality that it's the men's fault. It's the man's fault.
Yeah.
But what I'm realizing is that because the men are more feminine, we're becoming more masculine to counteract, or to counterbalance. Sorry.
And women's energy is different. I mean, I will tell you that, some of the strongest, best leaders as women that I know are not the most outgoing. They manage through silence in a very different way that I can't do.
Right.
They can pause and hold something.
And it comes from the gut. It comes from the heart. And it takes a while to hear that.
I hate to say women should shut up more. That's not what I'm saying.
Women should shut up more. I'll say it.
Well, like you in improv, you have to, and me as a speaker, you have to understand timing. Right.
Yes.
And the the talking over people and those kind of things are very masculine traits where women have a very different power. And that's not to say that, again, it's all on a spectrum. I mean, there are certainly women that reflect more masculine energy and men that reflect more feminine energy, all of those kind of things. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just when you understand that spectrum and you understand the roles that we all play.
Correct.
Right? I don't care what you believe about anything, but biologically, every living organism on this planet has roles.
Sure.
Cells operate independently. They combine together to create structure.
Right.
We cannot be individuals. We have to be part of something else. And unfortunately, the part of something else that we've become, because of weak men, has focused our attention on enemies. Right. Instead of going back to that enemy connection. Right?
Okay.
It is, we always have to have an enemy.
To feel masculine?
Well, I think we have to, I think we have to have an enemy to unify around.
Okay.
And then if that enemy, it's hard to sort of explain that psychology, and I don't really know it very well, but it always seems like that leads us down a bad path.
Yeah.
Right? And what I really embrace is, I think if men, because for many years, boomers, for instance, they didn't really think about women as anything more than objects, right? And I'm not. There's lots of reasons for that. Their psychology, the way they grew up, all sorts of different things.
Right.
But I think the man in the 60s, 70s, and 80s started to realize women as people. And then we started to,
or was it that women started to request it?
Well, yeah, I think that's part of it. I think women got a voice and stood up and said this. And I think some men, a lot of men actually said, this is a good point.
Yeah.
The problem is there was no clear line where it ended and began. So men tended to gravitate to that side and allow women, maybe not express those aspects of masculinity.
Well, it's that pendulum, as you said, right? It'll swing one way to the other, and then one. So I feel like right now we're right here, and it's gonna come back.
I wonder. I don't have kids, so I don't know this to be true. But I would tell you that I can walk around an airport. I can walk in any city in this country, and I see very little boys with broken legs or broken arms.
Yeah,
yes,
sure.
When I was a kid,
right?
I mean, of the 6 of us, somebody always had a cast on. So boys aren't they're not being separated from others and put into environments where they can understand risk. They can understand what they're capable of. I remember the first time going hunting. I think hunting I don't hunt anymore, but I've been writing a little piece about my grandfather. My grandfather hunted for years and years, every year deer camp. All of the sons were there, the grandsons, the uncles and cousins, everybody. And he never killed anything in his whole life, never shot a deer in his whole life. And I asked him about that one time, and I said, "Is it you're a bad shot?"
Yeah.
And he said, "No, it's that I've never loaded my gun." Hunting to me is about what he said is hunting to me is about gathering. And we talk about hunter gatherers, right? But the way he played that was hunting to me is about gathering with other men to perform these rituals that actually, he wasn't saying this is me reading into it now, that actually probably have a lot more meaning than any of us actually knew at the time.
Yeah.
That the first time I went to deer camp was the first time I was away from my mother for 4 or 5 days or a week.
Right.
And I'm with a bunch of, guys that are snoring and cooking. And like, I'm seeing guys cook. This is a weird thing. They cook totally differently than women. It's like a big bowl of slop pretty much every day, or steak and eggs for breakfast. And I saw those different traits. And then I remember there being, I don't remember what it was. I don't know if it was butchering a deer or something, but it was something that I realized my mother would really not like. But I felt a connection with others that were not my mother, that I felt this bond with. And then I also experienced this transpersonal other of like us as a group.
The community.
Yeah, that community. And I just think there is none of that now.
Yeah, especially for a little boy.
I get it. I get it like once a week from beer league hockey.
Yeah, right. A sport like hockey, that's why a
bunch of men in a locker room and it's violent, and it's like, it's like reprehensible to what my mother would have liked.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that funny? Like I was a bouncer at strip clubs in my early 20s. And, there were lots of guys.
You got a bouncer's build. I can see.
Especially when I was, I was the same weight, but much smaller waist. But, I can't tell you how many guys I knocked on their ass that I helped them back up and said, now come on in, let me buy you a beer. And you're going to sit there and you're not going to touch it, right? And they go, yes, sir. And they understood that.
That is so bad.
And then there was always the one, right, who was like, oh no, buddy. And then his friends would go, as a transpersonal other, we have just gotten our ass kicked.
Yeah.
It is time for us to step aside and wait for another day. And that I got to tell you, every fight I was in high school and all of these things, because we all experienced that when I was a kid. I was probably 20 fights. Every one of them, though, ended not in animosity. They ended in companion.
It's the weirdest thing.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
If you've ever watched a serious bar fight go down,
right?
If the police don't get there, it eventually breaks up. And it usually breaks up with a bunch of laughter and somebody that says something like, I'll buy the drinks before the next blow comes down, and everybody laughs and goes, okay, come on, let's go. And I mean, I will tell you, my best friend for many, many years was a guy that I got into a fist fight with over a girl.
Right.
And then afterwards, we were both like, she ain't that. Together, we're better than her. Let's go hang out. Right. And so we just have lost something in our society. And I think it's now unfortunately becoming really evident. And I'm concerned that it might be too late to rectify that. But all we can do as older men is to try to find younger men to impart that into. So they can't find it. It's not part of the society that at 13 years old, you have to go away for 2 weeks or you have to go live in the woods by yourself. Yeah. Or, what is it? I don't remember. I think it was one of the Norwegian countries where at 13, you have to separate from your mother for a year. You can't see her for a year. Then you can come back, but because you've changed now. Yeah. Right. You've evolved into the masculinity that you should have possessed in the first.
As you're on this masculine journey now in the stage of your life, you know, how does that, because the question we always love to ask, and we're going to have many episodes, but we are running up on our time on this episode. This masculine journey that you're on, how does that relate to what's coming next extraordinarily for Derrick Mains?
So I am really concerned right now about AI.
Okay.
Not for the same reasons everybody else is. I look at AI and I look at the incredible amount of knowledge that AI can impart into us, but it does not have wisdom. It does not have, it doesn't
Christine
even.
calls it, what do you call it?
Soulless?
Soulless. Yeah.
It doesn't have, like, think about work. We don't have tenure at work anymore. You know, I don't want to go off too far here, but if you've ever seen the Christmas Vacation, National Lampoon movie,
every year.
Yeah, Chevy Chase, right? I want you to think about the premise of that movie for a minute. 1989, the Griswolds are waiting his bonus check.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you really listen to the movie, he is a product manager at a cereal manufacturing company. He is not a manager. He's an individual contributor. And he is waiting on his bonus check because what are they planning on doing with the bonus check?
Buying a pool.
Buying an in-ground swimming pool. And in 1989, that was equivalent about $20,000.
Okay.
Today, it'd be about $65,000. Now, the expectation of Chevy Chase and his family would that they would receive a bonus for an individual contributor that would be as such, because the company did well and he did well, be as such that they could make this change to their lifestyle. The
Christmas hinged on it too.
It hinged on it.
Made or break the holiday.
And then when it shows up and it's a Jelly of the Month club, see, to us, that's funny. That was not funny to the people in the audiences. It was ironic because their fathers had worked 40 years at the same job and gotten the Rolex, and it had the pension, and it had the benefits, and it had the company car, and had all these things. And all of that over the late 1970s into the 1980s as private equity rose and we became a sort of a banking society, all of those things were stripped away. So to you and I, we laugh at it and say, oh, that's crazy. But at that time, people in that audience actually sat there and said, I remember that Christmas.
Yeah.
I remember that Christmas where my dad didn't get the bonus and we didn't have this and we didn't have this. So I think what we have is we have an unfortunate loss of legacy in our trades. We have a loss of legacy in a lot of different places. People now are transient. We are the cogs in the machine anymore. You know, listen to some Pink Floyd for a minute. The machine isn't the machines, the machine is us, and we're the replaceable cogs. And that is a real problem. We have got to find a way to extract wisdom from our elders before it's too late.
I love that.
And be more human.
Absolutely. Right. Align more with what evolutionary biology made us in the first place.
Got it.
Versus what we want to cast ourselves at. I'm okay with controlling our own evolution as a species. I think we should do that. I think we should be really thinking into the future. But you cannot take 300,000 plus years of human evolution and the archetypal patterns of men and women and throw that in the garbage. You have to establish that as at least understand the extraction of that knowledge from that, and then turn that into archetypes and artifacts that others can follow.
So you're on a quest for gathering wisdom, it sounds like.
I'm on a quest for gathering wisdom, but more than that, I wouldn't say I am. I actually would say I'm on a quest to help others realize what we've lost. And that to me is more important, because once you understand what you lost, you'll also return to that primordial soup for a bit. And then you can reformulate with modern ideas about those things. But understanding that we don't, like, free will, yeah, we have free will, but we don't. We need food, shelter, clothing. What are the other things that we need? I don't think we've defined those things just yet. I think we intuitively know. And that's why when I tell the story, we talk about some of these things and we can relate to those things as boys and men because we experience that.
Yeah.
Men younger than you, though, probably haven't.
Definitely.
Yes.
But think about where they have.
Yeah.
Where they have. If you look at the map of America, and you look at voting patterns, where do those rituals still exist?
Sure.
They still exist outside
of
yeah. So that also gives you some understanding into that movement and understand that they still perform those rituals. And that has given them a different sense of self and a sense of purpose and a different perspective. And it also means that in those environments, if you cannot find a strong leader, you focus your attention on what you perceive as a strong leader. And I'll leave it at that.
And then what do you do when, you're getting this stream of what they want you to think on your phone for a 13-year-old boy who doesn't have a man?
Absolutely. Well, and I think being able to sit with things, right? I mean, I love My grandfather used a lot of silence. He'd tell you something and then you wanted to talk about it. And he's like, no, I don't want to talk about that. My mentor, my most influential mentor, he would ask me a question and tell me, you can tell me in 2 weeks. Don't tell me, I don't want to know the answers today. I want you to think about this and really understand it. And then when I came back with the wrong answer and he pointed me to the right answer, I understood why, because now I had built my own perspective, but I was able to replace it with his.
But you weren't just getting an answer.
He was not telling me what to do.
You were building your own.
Yeah.
He was guiding me through a structured process of understanding the world on my own.
It's that
and this is falling off the monkey bars. It's all of those things that we have to learn. And
be bored. Don't be afraid to be bored.
Yeah. I mean, most men have a scar someplace. There's mine. 4 years old, lapped my finger off, and ran to my mother, and then afterwards my dad said to me, okay, you're a young boy. That's okay. But you're not going to be able to act like that going forward.
Right.
And you could call that coercion. You could call it all sorts of things, but he was actually speaking from a deeper purpose. Farbs, I know we're going over time here, but I want to tell the audience something I think every man here will understand. There is a moment in time when your father had to go someplace. If you grew up with a father and he looked at you and he said, take care of your mother.
Yeah.
Usually you're about 7 or 8 years old when this happens.
Yeah.
What the can I do? Right?
Yeah.
But that is not a parting saying. That is a transfer of responsibility.
Yes.
And isn't it funny that men don't say that to their girls, right? Because they protect their girls. But men intuitively understand that I can't protect him forever. At some point, he has to become a protector. And the only way to do that is to give him these little pieces where he can a little bit of performative art, right, at first, so that he understands that role. He's seen what dad does in the house and he's seen what mom does. And now dad is left and he goes, oh, wait. Oh, I am responsible for these tasks and responsibilities.
I need to take the trash out.
Yeah. I have to do these things. Nobody has to tell me to do these things. I have to do them. And that's that break into individualism that I think every little boy needs. And I think if you don't get that, oh boy, this is where we get into all the psychological challenges we have today.
Yeah.
And moms and dads, teach your kids to have your sons open the doors for their moms.
Right. Yeah. That's
both my kids are racing to the door to open mine. And it's the little things like that.
It is not an expression of dominance.
Yes.
It is an expression of understanding the differences between societally, the differences between masculine and the feminine. Let's not even call it male and female.
Yeah.
Let's just call it those who sit in that masculine architect need to act in that masculine architect to help others work into theirs.
Let's all work together to create this neutral, polarity field.
I wonder if the history of that opening doors probably has something to do with women carrying babies.
Probably.
Right? And it's like, hey, look, you don't know if she's carrying a baby. Like,
you never know what it is. But
right.
the feeling that I get when my little boys open my door, every single time, it feels warm and it feels good. And I feel like a woman.
Yeah, right. And you feel cared for, protected, all of those kind of things. And I know we've gone way over time here, man.
But thank you. I mean, this was great.
And don't tell me 30 minutes and
don't worry, we're gonna have a lot more. Yeah, when I said 30, he said, so we're filming 10 episodes.
Yeah, I was like,
exactly what he said.
But in the closing of that, and I know we didn't go completely on script from what you said, is I'm not saying any of these things is a male chauvinist or egotistical or any of those kind of things.
Right. Yeah. No.
I'm actually trying to point out to people that we've broken something that has consequences.
Yeah.
And we might be able to look at it from our spectrum of moral beliefs and say, well, we don't like bullies being bullies. I don't either.
Yeah.
But what happens when they're not?
But man, it worked.
Yeah.
What happens when everyone's so nice?
Yeah. Right. I mean, what happens in those instances, and we've all seen it in movies and these kind of things of the prince who's sort of coddled and then gets that face to face with an enemy and realizes he's not a king. Nobody's made him a king.
Well, just to return to your original point, if you were to take bullying as an example, is it good or is it bad?
It never is.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. We
Maybe.
cannot judge the news based upon the news. You're right. We can't. What we have to do is take all of those things in and try to piece them together into the intent behind them.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't want to go on a tangent, but I think you look at Venezuela, you look at Greenland, you look at a lot of these conversations that are happening. These conversations aren't happening around places where there aren't resources that are undeveloped. They're only happening around places where there's resources and they're undeveloped. And if you go and watch the foreign news, not the American news, it's not just America that's making moves on those places.
Right.
We are responding to moves on those places. We're not making moves. We're looking, people are looking at it as the aggressor. But how does the aggressor show up after the action already begins? That does not compute. Now there might be aggression behind the intent, and there might be, it might be misplaced, but it is a response.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
Okay. We'll pick it up at our next conversation. Derrick Mains, everybody. Derrick, where can people find out more about you?
theprocessfixer.com or on The Process Fixer, we're launching a community right now of purpose, a community of practice for operations leaders.
Great.
But also for thinkers.
Cool.
And some of those things are challenging because we're asking people sometimes to write articles about topics that they disagree with, but write them from the perspective of persuasion, so that they can hold another opinion,
hold an opposing thought in your head. Yeah.
See if I can convince you of something I don't believe in.
Yeah,
I think Rory Sutherland's a guy that does that regularly. There's a few greats that are really good at that can make a point that you believe and then
dismantle
the point and make you understand that you are subject to influence.
Yeah, and you can also check out his book.
Yeah, check out the book,
The System.
And I know a lot of people say I talk fast. The best way to listen to this book is at 0.7 speed. It's me reading it, so just slow it down and let it go. I know that I'm a Northeasterner. It's in my blood. So
I
love it.
I can't.
You can also read a lot more about Derrick at his profile on joinextraordinary.com, joinextraordinary.com, joinextraordinary.com. As always, I'm Forbes Shannon. With me,
Christine Butler.
And Derrick Mains. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.